Welcome to week 9. So this week we are going to focus on something called verification and validation. So testers have two essential roles in software development team. First, they need to ensure that the product is built right. Second, they need to ensure that the right product is built. The former is called verification, ensuring that the product is free of defects. The latter is called validation, ensuring that the product meets the client's needs. Verification and validation are two widely and commonly used terms. Most of the time, we consider both the term as the same, but actually these terms are quite different. Verification is the process of determining whether or not the products of a given phase of the software development cycle fulfills the requirements established during the previous phase. Validation is also known as the process of evaluating software at the end of the software development process to ensure that compliance with software requirements. So I'm going to show you a list of the differences really between verification and validation right now. Now let's go into an example of verification and validation so you have a good idea what the difference is. This one's going to be pretty simple. So consider we have this following specification. A clickable button with name submit. So verification would check that the design document and correct the spelling mistake. Otherwise, the development team will create a button with the word submit spelled S-U-B-M-E-T as the text in the button. So the new specification is a clickable button Start over. Now let's go into an example to really give you another idea of the difference between verification and validation is. So consider the following specification. A clickable button with name submit. Yes, I spelled that incorrectly for a reason. So let's say that's what the specification says. So verification would check the design document and then go in and correct the spelling. Otherwise, your pesky developer working on this will create a button with the word submit spelled incorrectly as the text in the button. So what I'm saying here is that, verification will actually just verify that what this button would be with incorrect spelling is correct or not. So they will go and check the design document and realize that, no, it's actually spelled incorrectly. This is not the way we want it. So we will have a new specification that says a clickable button with the name submit spelled correctly. So that's verification. So once the code is ready, so let's say the developer went in and made this button and it's spelled correctly, validation will be done. At this point, a validation test found that the button says submit spelled correctly, just how our new specification states, but the button is not clickable. So what do we do now? We go back to the development team and say, hey, you didn't make this button clickable. It's a button. It should be clickable. Please fix this. So with the validation, we're just making sure everything works correctly as expected. So then the development team will go back and just make that button clickable. So a big part of the verification and validation process is to ensure that defects are reported in a consistent and unambiguously manner. This is true whether the defects is related to verification or validation. So there is a defect report that comes into play. This week we are actually going to be creating the defect reports. So let's take a look at the reading this week. The first thing is you're going to look at bug dashes and beta testing found in Software Testing 2nd edition. The next section is reporting what you find in that same article. Now, the third one is going to be how to write a bug report. And this is going to be a different thing that you're reading. This is a very good reading here. And then anomaly report. All right, so let's move on to defect selection. So before I jump into this, let me go over a few things. So our lab this week will be to create 5 bug reports. In order to do this, we first must select 5 bugs to make reports on. So with your partners, you will review several defects within the Mr. Mobile application. With your partners, investigate these defects and choose 5 you will use for your bug reports. And this is going to be due on Saturday, but I encourage you to get it done early. Your group will also at this point determine a bug report format that you want to use. So this mission will include a list of defects you will report on, and then a sample bug report with which you will serve to create your template. So here is the instructions for the defect selection. So as you can see, there's already a list of defects here that you can choose from. So just go ahead and choose the ones that you like. So, and that's going to be it there. And then you're going to come up with the format for your bug report. So let's go ahead and move on to the last thing, and it's going to be your bug report. So based on the bug report template previously submitted and feedback from me, you are to create a bug report for each of the 5 defects you have previously submitted. So I really want to take a look at your bug report beforehand. I know the assignment's due on Saturday, same time as this assignment, but I want to provide you feedback, so that's why I encourage you to submit it early. So let's say you got your bug report or your template for your bug report, and I've reviewed it, and you should be good. So let's go ahead and create a report. So based on the bug report template previously submitted, so first, locate each of the defects in the Mr. Mobile application. Make sure you fully understand the defect, including how to make the bug manifest itself and what the expected behavior should be. Next, make sure you understand the validations and the defect. So, is there more than one way to make the defect occur? Does the defect appear in more than one place in the application? Have you selected the minimum number of steps necessary to manifest the defect? Finally, you're going to fill out the bug template with precision. Make sure that all your writings are professional. Every piece of information must be presented in an unambiguous way. There is nothing extra and nothing missing. So let me go ahead and show you the test script template. So first we have the instruction. So this is going to be the description and the instructions on what you need to do to test. So this should look familiar to you. The data. So this is any test data that you'll need. So this should also look familiar to you. Now, keep in mind, before I move on, I want to mention that there are some instructions here, or some examples. I'm not expecting you to understand what any of this means. It's very much related to my job. So, but just keep in mind, if you're trying to look at this, like Trish is just a time tracking tool for you to keep track of your hours on the different projects that you're working on. So that way, your projects can be charged accordingly to the amount of hours that you've been working on them. So moving on, we have your expected results and then your actual results based on your test that you ran, and then your past criteria as well. So you can take a look at that. These next 2 items here, you can ignore. You don't really need. You might have some additional things in your test cases, just depending on your organization. But the next thing I want to point out is this next section. As you can see here, we are expecting them to have multiple different testers for a specific test case or test script, as they call them here. So I wanted to show this because it's important, because you need to be able to write your test cases and your bug reports in such a way that, you know, we can pass this on to multiple testers and they will get the same results. And now we do have a comment section for the testers if they want to include additional comments, things like that. And then we have some other items here at the end that you can ignore at this point. So with that being said, I just wanted to show that to you. Some real world examples. So if we go back to the test tracking and defect log template, so you have your test ID, which would come from this previous document we just looked at. And then let's say you found your test. You ran this first test, for an example, and you found some issues. It didn't pass. So the testing tracking tool and the defect log tool, this is really what you will be doing to document the defects. So you indicate the test script ID, you indicate the defect description, severity. So it could be a major impact, or critical, medium, or low. So you'll rate the defect. How important really is it? Then you have the defect identity identified by. So this would be your name if you were the tester that identified it. The defect owner. So you may have specific people within your team or organization that own specific parts of the software that's being tested. So identifying who the owner is important, because then you can tell that individual, hey, we have a defect here. Your team needs to work on this and get this fixed. So the status here, this is just the status of the defect, whether it's in progress, it's being worked on, it's resolved, or it's being retested, things like that. So this is just a way for you to keep track of your defects. And then we have the defect discovery date. So that's just the date that you are testing it. So when you are out testing this test script or your test cases, you will then document what date that you found that defect on. And that's important just to note whether there's any misinformation. Maybe we did go back and fix it and we retested it, but this defect was not documented here. So we can go back and then just double check everything. Last section is just any comments.
On a final note, kids, don't forget to eat your broccoli. It's good for you.